A proud prince laughed at the oracle's warning, mocking the very voice of destiny before his nobles. But when midnight came, his laughter froze in terror, his crown had turned to horns, his hands to hooves. He was no longer a prince, but a goat. From that night, the kingdom erupted in chaos. Courtiers jeered, maidens mocked, and his betrothed abandoned him for his rival. Banished and disgraced, he thought the worst was over, until whispers spread of a blood moon ritual, a sacrifice that would seal his fate forever. But in the shadows of the palace, a humble maiden watched with quiet eyes. She saw not a beast, but sorrow in his tears. And when the night of the blood moon came, her choice would defy the cruelty of nobles, shake the throne, and prove that salvation can rise from the hands the proud once despised. This is the story of how arrogance became horns, how a servant's kindness broke a curse, and how the kingdom learned that the true strength of a crown lies not in pride, but in humility. Before we dive deeper into this epic tale, we'd love to know where you are watching from. Tell us in the comments. And if you love high-stakes fantasy filled with mermaids, magic, love, and sacrifice, don't just watch, be part of our adventure. Like this video, share it with someone who loves powerful stories, and hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow, we've got an extra special story lined up for you, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Once upon a time, in the sunlit kingdom of Zubari, there lived a young prince named Adewale. His name meant the crown has come home, and indeed he carried himself as though every jewel of the earth already belonged to him. The palace walls shone with red clay polished each morning by servants. Drummers struck their rhythms in the courtyards at dawn. Merchants lined the gates with baskets of yams, kola nuts, and palm oil, hoping for a royal glance. And in the very heart of this grandeur walked Adewale, tall and strong, his golden brown skin glistening in the sun, his black braids bound in a crown shaped by a brass clasp. His amber eyes gleamed, but they gleamed too brightly, with pride, with arrogance. For while the people called him handsome, he believed himself untouchable. Adewale was a man who loved the sound of his own voice. When servants bent low before him, he did not simply nod, he demanded they stay bowed until his laughter was done. When young maidens fluttered their eyes, he told them they were fortunate even to look upon his face. And when nobles whispered counsel in his ear, he waved them aside like flies buzzing around a lion. Why should a prince, he often boasted, listen to the weak? Was I not born to rule? Did not the ancestors themselves crown me at birth? The elders frowned at such words. The servants whispered warnings in the kitchens. But no one dared to correct him openly, for who would risk the wrath of the future king? Yet one morning, the palace drums fell silent. The bustling courtyard hushed. A figure entered through the bronze gates, and the very air seemed to grow heavy. It was the oracle. She was an old woman, bent with years yet taller than all in presence. Her dreadlocks, streaked with gray and white, hung like ropes over her shoulders. Around her neck clattered bones, shells, and beads. She leaned on a staff carved with serpent coils and sun symbols, and as she walked, the ground seemed to tremble. Servants scattered. Guards froze. Even the king himself straightened on his stool of ivory. For the oracle did not come to the palace without reason. She was the voice of the ancestors, and her words were fire. Adewale, however, did not bow. He smirked, tilting his head, his golden bracelet catching the light. "Why does the old woman come crawling to my father's court?" he asked, loud enough for all to hear. The oracle lifted her staff. Her eyes, white as the full moon, locked on the young prince. Her voice rose, deep and booming, yet edged with sorrow. "Prince Adewale," she declared, "your pride has blinded you. You mock the lowly, and you spit on wisdom. Hear the words of the ancestors, your arrogance will turn your crown into horns. And salvation shall rise from the hands you despise." The court gasped. A murmur swept through the hall. The drummers struck a nervous beat, then fell silent. But Adewale threw back his head and laughed. "Horns? On my head," he scoffed. "Old woman, your staff has rotted, and your tongue has twisted. I am the crown of Zubari. The sun itself bends to my will, and you dare to speak of horns. Ha!" The nobles chuckled uneasily. Some forced laughter to match the prince, though their eyes darted nervously to the oracle. The king shifted but did not speak. The oracle's face did not move. She simply tapped her staff once against the floor. The sound echoed like thunder in a storm. "Mock if you will," she said. "But when the moon bleeds, and you wander with the animals, remember my words. For the throne you hold in arrogance shall be shaken, and only the humble shall stand." Her words lingered in the air like smoke. Then she turned, her beads rattling, and walked slowly out of the palace, her staff striking the earth with each step. A heavy silence followed. The courtiers shifted, whispering behind their hands. But Adewale's pride was too great. He clapped his hands and shouted, "Bring me palm wine. Let us drink to my horns, for if I grow them, I shall be the finest ram in Zibari." The crowd forced laughter, though unease still lingered. Only a few servants dared to glance at the departing oracle, fear written on their faces. That evening, Adewale boasted even louder. "Did you hear her words? She promised I would become a beast. Perhaps I should grow hooves and chase the maidens through the courtyard. Would they not still love me?" The nobles laughed, though hollowly. The betrothed noblewoman Kiru, tall and regal with long braids wrapped in golden thread, rolled her eyes but forced a smile. The rival Prince Okoro, standing nearby with his sharp eyes, smirked quietly to himself. But far in the shadows of the courtyard, a young maiden named Amina carried baskets of food and whispered under her breath, "Ancestors, protect us, for his pride will bring only sorrow." And above, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the palace walls. The oracle's words still rang in the ears of those who had listened. "Your arrogance will turn your crown into horns, and salvation shall rise from the hands you despise." No one could yet know how quickly those words would come to life. Morning came to Zibari with the smell of firewood, roasted yams, and the beat of talking drums. The red clay walls of the palace warmed under the sun. Birds hopped along the roof beams. Servants swept the courtyards until the floor shone like polished copper. Prince Adewale stepped out in a robe the color of ripe palm fruit. His braids were tied high with a brass clasp. Coral beads rested on his neck. When he walked, people moved aside as if the wind itself pushed them. "Clear the way," a guard shouted. Adewale did not need the guard's voice. He lifted his chin and smiled at his own reflection in a bronze tray a servant held out for washing. He winked at himself. "Fine prince," he said softly to the tray. "Even the sun tries to copy your shine." An old steward named Baba Kunal stood nearby. He had served 3 kings and had the slow steps of a man who had walked through many seasons. He bowed low. "My prince, the council waits in the small hall. There is news from the farms. The rains are late. The people ask for help." Adewale stretched his arms. "Let them ask. Are they not always asking? If the rains are late, they should sing louder. The sky will listen." Baba Kunal kept his eyes on the floor. "The granaries grow thin. Perhaps we can open the king's storehouse for a time." Adewale waved a hand. "Do not start the day with sad talk, Baba. Bring the drummers. Bring palm wine. I will show the council how a prince brightens a morning." The drummers came. The drums answered Adewale's words with quick, proud beats. He laughed, matching their rhythm with a clap of his hands. As he walked to the small hall, nobles followed, fanning him and praising him. Inside, the council sat on low stools. Maps made of dyed cloth lay across a table, drawings of rivers, farms, and roads. A head farmer pointed to a faded patch of cloth. "My prince, the yam mounds here are dry," she said. "We need new wells. We need oxen to pull the heavy clay." Adewale took the map and turned it in his hands as if it were a toy. "Wells. Oxen." He glanced at the windows. "The day is too bright for digging holes. Come, let us speak of something sweet. A festival perhaps. If the rains are late, we will dance until the clouds are shy and cover us." The farmer's jaw tightened. "My prince, yams do not grow from dancing." Laughter ran around the hall from a few nobles. Adewale smiled like a cat. No, but neither do yams grow from whining. Across the room, Prince Okoro watched with cool eyes. He wore a dark green tunic with gold stitching. His hands rested on a curved dagger at his side. He said nothing, but when Adewale looked his way, Okoro's lips held a thin smile that did not reach his eyes. Lady Nkiru, tall and glittering in coral beads, leaned close to Adewale. "Sweet prince, the farmers will always cry. The council will always worry. But the people also love a show." She flicked her gaze toward the drummers. "Let the drums speak louder than the clouds." Adewale chuckled. "You see. Nkiru understands. Let us plan a new masked dance in the main courtyard tonight. We will invite the city. Music will chase the sun to the edge of the world." The head farmer opened her mouth to speak again, but Baba Kunnal lifted a hand, begging her to be still. His old eyes turned to Adewale. "My prince, the oracle came yesterday. The people whisper about her words. Perhaps." "Enough," Adewale said, his smile thinning. "The old woman's smoke has filled the palace long enough. If her words had weight, they would have bent my head to the floor. Do I look bent?" He stood taller. The gold on his cuffs flashed. "Today, bring joy to Zabari. Tonight, we dance." He left the hall with Nkiru beside him, Okoro walking a few steps back and to the side. The drummers followed, rolling thunder beneath their feet. The palace kitchens buzzed with heat and voices. Amina carried a tray of roasted plantains, moving carefully so the oil would not spill. She slipped through a door and stepped into a side garden where palm trees shook their fronds like fans. As Amina passed, two palace girls whispered behind their hands. "Did you see the prince? He shines like a new coin. He said there will be a dance. Maybe he will pick a girl to join him." Amina kept her face calm. In her heart she felt the oracle's voice still moving like wind across tall grass. "Your arrogance will turn your crown into horns." She shivered. She did not wish shame for anyone, not even a proud prince, but the words would not leave her. A small bleat sounded near the garden wall, soft, sad. Amina turned and saw a young goat tied to a post. It wasn't the prince, not yet, not at all, just an ordinary goat brought for a coming feast. Still, its eyes were wide and kind. Amina stopped and rubbed its head. "Little one," she whispered, "may your path be gentle." From the doorway, a kitchen woman called, "Amina. Bring those plantains before they grow cold." "Yes, Mama Teo." Amina hurried on. By late afternoon, the palace changed its clothes. Bright cloths were hung across the courtyards. Clay lamps were set in lines like small stars waiting for night. Masked dancers painted their faces with white chalk, drawing spirals and waves. Drummers tightened skins on their drums and warmed their hands over small fires. A singer tested her voice, soft hums that rose and fell like a bird over water. Adewale stood in the center, surrounded by guards. He wore a white tunic edged with bronze thread. No crown today, he wished to show a prince could dazzle even without it. Nkiru touched his sleeve, her bracelets chiming. "Look at them," she said. "They love you." "Of course," Adewale said. "Why should they not?" Okoro drifted near like a shadow. "The city does love a celebration," he said. "But brothers, sisters, even drums grow tired when the fields are empty." Adewale clapped Okoro's shoulder, not gently. "Cousin, your tongue is a small drum. Too many warnings beat from it." Okoro's smile was thin. "My prince, warnings are like bridges. You only see their use when you stand over a river. Then let the river rise," Adewale said. "We will still cross." The drums began. They spoke in the strong language of the ancestors, boom, ba, boom boom, long, proud sentences. Dancers spun. Fans waved. Children stamped their feet to the beat. The air was thick with sweat and joy. Adewale danced at the center. He was graceful, sure-footed, shining. When he leaped, the crowd shouted. When he spun, coral beads flashed. He lifted his arms and the people raised their hands as if catching gold falling from the sky. On the palace edge, Baba Kunnal watched with worry pinched between his brows. He whispered to a guard, "Keep lamps ready for the night watch. The moon tonight looks strange." "What do you mean, Baba?" the guard asked. "Just watch," Baba Kunnal said. "Sometimes the sky speaks." The sun sank. The sky turned the color of red kola nut. Stars pricked through like needle points of light. The great moon rose slowly, heavy and low. For a moment it looked pale. Then, like a shy face coming to a doorway, it blushed darker and darker until it wore the robe of a deep ember, a blood moon. A hush rolled through the courtyard. Even the drums softened. Children pointed. "Why is the moon red?" The singer's voice faltered and stopped. People looked at one another and tried to smile. "It is only the sky playing," someone said. "It is only dust," said another. Adewale laughed. "Is this the old woman's trick? She promised horns, did she not? Look, my head is smooth as a calabash." He ran a hand over his brow with a flourish. "Drums. Louder." The drums obeyed, but the rhythm felt thin. The dancers moved, but their feet were slow. Adewale drank palm wine and flicked a drop to the earth. "For the ancestors," he said, "grand and bright." Baba Kunnal stepped close. "My prince," he whispered. "Let the people go home early. The moon is not friendly tonight." Adewale waved him away. "You are old, Baba. The night frightens your bones. Let the young carry the night." Nkiru leaned on Adewale's arm. "Ignore the old men. Let the moon blush if it wishes. Your light is stronger." Okoro's eyes were on the sky. He did not smile now. His fingers tightened around the hilt of his dagger. "Sometimes the moon warns, cousin." Adewale's laugh snapped like dry wood. "You two could share one tongue." He turned to the crowd. "My people, do not fear colors. If the moon is red, it is because she envies our dance. We are the reason the sky blushes." Some laughter returned. The drums picked up again. But the moon grew darker, deeper, like a fruit filled with pounded pepper. Amina stood at the back of the crowd with other servants. She held a clay jug and watched Adewale. For a heartbeat she thought she saw a quick shadow twitch at his forehead, like a line of black ink that wasn't there a moment before. She rubbed her eyes. "No," she whispered. "It is nothing." But the air itself felt heavy, as if the world had taken a deep breath and forgotten to release it. Night walked toward midnight on silent feet. The dancers grew tired. The children slept on their mothers' backs. Servants gathered empty calabashes. The last songs faded. Adewale stood alone in the center of the courtyard. Even Nkiru had stepped away for a moment to fix a necklace clasp. A cool wind slid between the clay walls and teased his tunic. He lifted his face to the red moon and spoke softly, half to himself, half to the sky. "Old woman, where are your horns? Where is your thunder? I still stand. I still shine." The wind answered with a low sigh. Adewale rubbed his brow. A small ache had started there, like an ant bite. He frowned and pressed his fingers to the spot. "Strange," he muttered. Perhaps the head wrap was too tight. He turned to go. The ache sharpened. He stopped and touched his brow again. The skin felt hot, like clay fresh from the kiln. Behind a pillar, Okoro watched. In a shadowed doorway, Baba Kunnal watched. From the servants' lane, Amina watched too, her hands pressed to her chest. Adewale took one more step. The ache speared into pain so quick and sharp he gasped. He reached for a wall and missed. The courtyard tilted. His vision blurred, then cleared, then blurred again. His fingers tingled. His knees trembled. "Enough," he whispered, trying to laugh. "Palm wine plays tricks." The pain struck again, harder, deeper, as if something under his skin pushed against bone. A thin cry broke from his throat. He clutched his head. His nails scraped his brow, felt a hard curve where there should be only skin. No drum sounded now. No voice rose. The courtyard was a bowl holding only the prince's breathing. Adewale staggered toward the inner hall, toward safety, toward anything that felt solid. His bracelets clinked. His steps scraped. The moon watched with its red eye. He reached the threshold and paused. A low, strange sound filled the air, like a bleat, soft but wrong, a sound that did not belong in a human mouth. It came from him. Adewale froze. His heart thumped like a fist on a drum. He shook his head, but the sound came again and again. Behind him, Baba Kunal whispered a prayer. Adewale pressed his brow with both hands. Under his palms, something hard pushed back. His breath shortened. And then, in the far corner of the courtyard, the oracle's staff, left leaning near a pillar by some unseen hand, gave one dry, hollow tap against the floor, as if the wood itself had agreed with the moon. Adewale's eyes lifted, wide, brilliant with fear and pride fighting in the same flame. "Old woman," he whispered to the empty air, voice shaking, "you will not bend me." But the ache rose like a wave, and the night, deep and red, began to lean over him. The moon stood high above the kingdom of Zubari, red as palm oil poured across the sky. Shadows stretched long in the palace courtyard. The drums had fallen silent. Only the chirp of crickets and the rustle of palm leaves moved through the night. Prince Adewale staggered through the courtyard, one hand on his brow. The ache inside his skull pounded like a drum beaten too hard. He gasped, swaying on his feet. "It is only the wine," he muttered. Yes, only wine. But no wine ever made horns grow. From the corner of the courtyard, Baba Kunal, the old steward, whispered a prayer. His tired eyes filled with sorrow as he saw the proud prince's head begin to swell. The skin at Adewale's brow pushed upward. His amber eyes burned wide. He clawed at his face, trying to tear away the ache. Then came the sound, a low tearing, like bark splitting from a tree. Horns broke through his skin. He screamed, falling to his knees. His hands, trembling, twisted and bent. Fingers shrank, nails thickened into black hooves. His legs buckled. His robe slipped loose as his body shrank into the coarse, furred shape of a goat. The courtyard filled with gasps. Guards rushed in, but froze in fear. Nobles who had lingered for wine dropped their calabashes. One maiden fainted. And standing at the edge of the crowd, Prince Okoro smiled faintly, hiding it behind his hand. Lady Nkiru shrieked. "What devilry is this?" She pressed against Okoro's side, her gold-threaded braids shaking. "It is no devilry," Baba Kunal said hoarsely. "It is the oracle's words. The curse has come." The goat lifted its head. But it was no ordinary goat, its face still bore the sorrowful eyes of Adewale. Tears welled, glowing in the red light of the blood moon. A hush swept the courtyard. Then, one by one, the courtiers began to laugh. "A prince of horns," cried one noble. "The crown has turned to hooves," jeered another. "Look at him. Once so proud, now fit only for the butcher's knife." The laughter grew cruel. Adewale bleated in anguish, stumbling backward. He looked for his father, the king, but the old man had already turned his face away, unable to bear the shame. Nkiru pulled her hand from her betrothed's broken form and slipped her arm through Okoro's instead. "The ancestors have chosen," she said coldly. "Adewale is no longer fit to rule. The throne belongs to one without horns." Okoro's lips curved into a thin smile. He stroked her hand but said nothing. Baba Kunal stepped forward, trembling. "My prince, do not fight the curse. Remember the oracle's words. Only humility." But his voice was drowned by jeers. Servants spat. Nobles mocked. Even children, woken from sleep, pointed and giggled. The goat, once a prince, bolted. He leapt past guards, knocking aside a clay pot, and fled into the night. His hooves clattered against the red earth. Behind him, laughter echoed through the palace like thunder. The city of Zubari stirred with whispers by dawn. Market women carrying gourds shook their heads. Palm wine tappers muttered as they tied their ropes. Drummers struck uneasy beats, telling the tale before tongues could spread it. Did you hear? The prince has horns. The oracle's curse has fallen. He was proud, and the spirits have shamed him. In the courtyards, children made games of chasing goats, shouting, Adewale! Adewale, as the animals scattered. Far away, by the city gates, the goat with the prince's human eyes stumbled. He nosed at scraps, chewing dry leaves and thrown peels. His body trembled, not with hunger alone but with the weight of his shame. He thought of the oracle's voice, your arrogance will turn your crown into horns. He bleated softly. Then, in the smallest voice, almost human, he whispered, if only I had listened. Dawn broke over Zubari like a slow drum. The sky faded from purple to pink. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Roosters called from yard to yard. But inside the palace, peace did not come. It was like a pot that boiled without a lid. Guards ran. Courtiers whispered. Servants gathered at doorways and peeped into halls. The story had grown longer than the palace itself. The prince grew horns. The prince became a goat. The oracle's words came true. In the great courtyard, the king sat on the ivory stool, his face heavy and old. The red clay walls held the chill of night. A huge drum lay silent beside the throne. Nobles took their places on low stools, eyes bright with gossip and fear. Baba Kunnal, the old steward, walked to the king and bowed until his forehead touched the floor. Your Majesty, he said, voice rough, the people crowd the gates. They ask if the curse is true. The king looked past Baba to the open space at the center of the court. His lips trembled. I do not know what to say, he whispered. Adewale is my son. Before Baba could answer, a proud voice cut the air. Lady Nkiru swept into the court, the gold threads in her braids flashing like small suns. She did not kneel. She stood tall, eyes sharp as spear tips. Beside her walked Prince Okoro, calm and cool, dressed in a dark green tunic with gold stitches that caught the light in thin lines. Nkiru spoke first. Your Majesty, the land must be safe. The gods have judged. Adewale has fallen. Zubari needs a strong hand. Murmurs moved like wind across dry leaves. Some nobles nodded. Some looked at the ground. Some watched the king's face to see which way the river would flow. Prince Okoro bowed, but only a little. Uncle, he said softly, I offer service. I will protect Zubari while you grieve. The king's eyes narrowed. You speak of protection, he said, but the night is not yet cold, and already your words are warm with ambition. Okoro's mouth curved. A kingdom has no night or day. It only has duty. Baba Kunnal lifted a hand. Where is the prince? He asked. We must find him. We must hide him until this storm passes. A guard hurried in and shook his head. He is gone from the inner courts. We saw tracks near the rear gate. Goat tracks. The last two words came out small, as if he feared they might bite him. From the kitchen walkway, Amina stood half-hidden, clutching a tray she had forgotten to carry. Her heart thudded against the wood. He ran, she thought. He is hurt. He is alone. Nkiru's voice rose again, bright and cold. If Adewale is seen inside these walls as a beast, the people will say the gods are angry with Zubari. Already the markets crack with rumor. Already the drummers whisper shame into their skins. She spread her hands. Send him out. Send him away. Save the name of the crown. Enough, the king snapped, but his voice shook. He rubbed his forehead. The lines there were deep as cracks in old clay. He is my son. Okoro stepped forward, head low in polite sorrow. Your Majesty, a father's love is strong, but a kingdom's fear is stronger. If the oracle spoke, then the ancestors watch. We must make a sign of respect to them. Banishing him shows we fear the gods more than we fear shame. It may calm the city. A long silence followed. Even the birds on the roof beams seemed to hold their breath. At last the king reached for the drum beside him and struck it once with his palm. The sound rolled like thunder. Every head lifted. "The court will hear the king," the herald cried, though his own voice wavered. The king spoke, slow and heavy. The oracle warned. My son mocked. The moon blushed. A curse came. He shut his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Search for Adewale. If he is found within the walls, bring him to the gate. Give him a gourd of water and a wrap for the cold. Then, let him go. The last 3 words fell like stones in a river. A sigh moved around the court, some from relief, some from sorrow, some from hunger for more trouble. Baba Kunal bowed low, his back shivering. As you command, your majesty. Nkiru smiled with only one side of her mouth. Okoro's eyes flickered like the edge of a knife catching light. They did not need to search long. By the old palm behind the kitchens, a small stall had been used to keep goats for feasts. In the shadow of that stall, the goat with a human gaze stood trembling, eyes wide and wet. A strip of white cloth, Adewale's tunic, lay in the dust like a shed snake skin. 2 guards moved toward him, slow and careful, as if approaching a cliff. Easy, one whispered. Easy, my prince. The goat bleated once, soft and hopeless. He did not run. He was tired to the bones. Amina watched from behind a clay pot. She pressed a hand to her mouth to keep from calling his name. When the guards looped a rope around his neck, she felt the pull in her own throat. Do not fight, she prayed. Do not make them angry. Live. Please live. The guards led him through the inner hall, past red walls and polished floors that had once echoed with his proud steps. Courtiers parted like reeds when a canoe moves through water. Some laughed behind their hands. Some stared openly with cruel joy. Look, the prince bows at last, a nobleman said. See how he walks on 4 legs like the rest of us, another sneered. Baba Kunal walked beside the goat, his old eyes burning with tears he would not let fall. My prince, he whispered, hold your head as high as you can. Even a goat can look at the sky. At the palace gate, the king stood waiting, wrapped in a plain cloth with no beads. He had sent away the drums. He had sent away the fan-bearers. Only a small guard stood near him, and Baba Kunal, and the herald with his thin voice. The king looked at the goat. For a long time he said nothing. Then his shoulders sagged. My son, he said, and the words broke like dry sticks under a foot. I cannot undo what your mouth has done. I cannot turn the moon back to white or the horns back to a crown. I can only pray. He nodded to Baba Kunal. The steward brought a gourd of water and a grey wrap. The guard bent and tied the wrap loosely around the goat's body as if the cloth could protect him from the world's teeth. He set the gourd on the ground and pushed it gently with his foot. The goat sniffed, then drank, throat working fast. The herald raised his staff. His voice was thin but it carried. By the word of the king and the fear of the ancestors, Prince Adewale, cursed of the oracle, is sent from the gates of Zabari. Let no hand strike him. Let no door open to him. Let the wild carry him until the gods speak again. The words scraped Amina's heart. Let no door open to him. She swallowed hard and gripped the clay wall to keep from stepping forward. Adewale, no, the goat, lifted his head. His amber eyes found the king. For a breath, the old man thought he saw his boy inside that gaze, the child who once brought him a broken drum and said, Fix it, Baba, the youth who once stood on the palace wall and shouted that he would be a river strong enough to carry the sun. The king's throat clicked. Go, he whispered. Go, and live. The guards opened the big bronze-studded gate. Morning flooded in, market shouts, donkey brays, the clack of pots, the smell of frying oil and wet earth. The rope slackened. The goat stepped forward. He hesitated, turned once as if to memorize the shape of the gate, the smell of the clay, the trembling of his father's hands. Then he lowered his head and walked into the city. The gate shut behind him with a sound like a large drum hit once and left to hum. The streets of Zubari were sharp with eyes and tongues. Children ran after the goat, laughing. "See the prince," they called. "Bow to us now, Hornhead." One boy tossed a peel. Another poked with a stick until a market woman slapped his ear. "Leave the poor creature," she scolded. "Even goats carry hearts." But as the goat moved on, other voices rose, loud and ugly. "Ancestors' shame. Cursed. May his hooves never touch my doorway." The goat searched for shadows where he could breathe. Outside a pepper stall, he found a few wilted leaves and chewed them until his jaw ached. A dog snapped near his leg. He stepped away and stood in a patch of sun, trembling. By the river path, a beggar with one blind eye tapped the ground with a stick. He heard the goat's breath and turned his head. The beggar said softly, "Some curses are heavy. Some teach." He broke a piece of day-old yam and dropped it near the goat's hooves without looking. "Eat, traveler." The goat blinked. He lowered his head and ate the dry yam. It scratched his tongue but warmed his belly. He made a small sound that might have been thanks. Back at the palace, Nkiru stood on a balcony, watching the city roofs. "It is done," she said. Okoro leaned on the wall beside her. "It is only begun," he answered. "A kingdom with a red moon and a missing prince will search for a new sun." He slid a coin between his fingers and let it shine. "The people will need someone to hold the light." Nkiru smiled without warmth. "Then we must hold it tight." Baba Kunnal, far below, closed his eyes and prayed into his cupped hands. "Ancestors, watch him. Ancestors, bend the road so it does not break his feet." Amina slipped out through the servant's gate, her headscarf pulled low. She kept to side alleys, to cloth cellar shadows, to the thin spaces between houses where wash water ran in trickles. She knew she should return to the kitchens. She knew the head cook would scold. But the picture of the goat leaving the gate would not let her stay. She found him near the old fig tree by the river path. He stood with one leg tucked under him as if to make himself smaller. His eyes were half closed from fear and tiredness. "Ado," she stopped herself. A passerby glanced at her, then moved on. Amina knelt and spoke with her eyes on the ground, the way a servant speaks to no one at all. "Little one," she murmured, "the world has teeth. But I will not let them chew you." She set a small cloth on the ground and poured broken pieces of roasted plantain from her sleeve. She should have taken them to the kitchen trash. Instead, she pushed them near his mouth. The goat sniffed, then ate, one bite, then two, then faster. Amina smiled, and the tight knot in her chest loosened a little. "Good," she said. "Eat. Live." From behind the fig tree, a rough voice growled, "Girl. What are you doing?" She stood so quickly the world swam. A palace guard came down the path, face dark with anger. "Back to your work." "Yes, sir," she said, head bent. When he passed, she looked back once. The goat watched her with those human eyes, and in them Amina thought she saw a tiny light. Not joy. Not yet. Just a spark, like the first ember inside cold ash. "Live," she whispered again, and hurried away. As the sun climbed and the air grew hot, the goat wandered from shade to shade. He learned which alleys were kind and which corners spat stones. He learned to drink from shallow bowls set under roofs to catch rain. He learned that hunger speaks in a long voice and shame in a longer one. When the day began to lean toward evening, the city shadows stretched like tired arms. A drum far away tried a careful beat and then stopped, as if the drummer had changed his mind. The goat found a place under a broken cart and lay down, wrapping his hooves under his chest. His mind, which was still a mind that had known proud halls, played the oracle's words again and again like a song that will not end. "Your arrogance will turn your crown into horns. And salvation shall rise from the hands you despise." He closed his eyes. The city breathed around him. Somewhere, a child laughed. Somewhere else, someone cried. He lowered his head to the dust and let the night find him. Above the palace, the moon had lost some of its red, but not all. It watched the roads, the roofs, the river, and the broken cart where a goat slept like a fallen star dimmed to a coal. And at the edge of the market, where the lamps were few and the gossip was thick, two traitorous nobles sat on a bench and spoke in low voices. "Tonight we caught him by the kitchens," one said. "Tomorrow we will catch him by the tail." "How?" the other asked. The first noble smiled. "Rope is patient. Hunger is more patient. And we are the most patient of all." They laughed softly, the kind of laugh that has no music in it. The sun climbed above Zubari, bright and merciless. Its rays fell on the clay rooftops, the market stalls, and the prince who was now only a goat. His hooves pressed into the dust of the streets. His amber eyes, once proud, darted left and right as the people's voices followed him. "Look at him," shouted a boy, chasing with a stick. "The crown of horns." A woman slapped the boy's ear. "Leave that creature, child. He carries sorrow enough." But still the whispers followed. Cursed. Shamed. Once a prince, now a beast. The goat staggered to the market edge where scraps were thrown. He chewed banana peels, bitter and dry. A dog barked and lunged. Adewale kicked clumsily with a hoof and stumbled away. At the city's edge, under the shade of a fig tree, beggars sat in a ragged line. Some blind, some lame, some with nothing but empty calabashes before them. The goat paused. His chest heaved. He lowered his head and ate wilted leaves beside them. One old beggar turned his blind eyes toward him and chuckled. "Ah! Even princes can join our circle when the gods decide. Sit, hornhead, sit." The others laughed, not cruelly, but softly, as if sharing a bitter joke with the world. For the first time, Adewale did not flare with anger. He did not raise his head to remind them of who he was. He only folded his legs under him and sank to the dust. Hours passed. The sun leaned west. The beggars begged, their voices low and weary. The goat stayed beside them. A gourd of water was passed down the line. One beggar tipped it to the goat's mouth. "Drink, friend." Adewale drank. The water was warm, but it filled his throat and cooled the fire in his chest. He thought of the palace, the ivory stool, the drummers, the bright robes, the laughter. He thought of his mocking words. "Did not the ancestors crown me? Was I not born to rule?" And the shame grew heavier. He whispered, though no one could hear, if only I had listened." Back in the palace, Nkiru stood on the balcony, jewels heavy on her neck. Okoro leaned beside her. "The people are restless," she said. "They laugh, but they also fear. Fear makes them easy to guide." Okoro's dark eyes narrowed. "Yes. But fear is also a rope. Hold it too tight, and it snaps." He glanced down at the courtyard where guards trained. His dagger gleamed at his side. Let the people mock their fallen prince for now. Soon, they will beg for a new one. Nkiru smiled, cold as a snake in the grass. In the kitchens, Amina scrubbed pots, her hands raw with soap. But her mind was not on the work. She thought of the goat's eyes, sorrowful, human, filled with a light no animal carried. When no one watched, she hid a few crumbs of roasted yam in her shawl. That night, when the palace grew quiet, she slipped out the side gate. By the fig tree she found him, curled like a shadow among beggars. His ears twitched as she approached. His eyes lifted, and for a heartbeat, she saw the prince within them. She knelt, spreading the crumbs before him. "Eat," she whispered. "I will not let you starve." The goat ate quickly, but his gaze never left her face. When he finished, a tear slipped down his cheek. Amina's breath caught. She touched the ground beside him, her hand trembling. "You are not only a goat," she whispered. "I know you. I see you." The goat lowered his head, as if bowing, not from pride, but from something new. Something softer. Humility. And in that moment, though she could not yet know, the oracle's words began to stir like seeds waking in the soil. Morning came hot and dusty over Zubari. The streets were already busy, Women balancing baskets on their heads, boys rolling old wheels with sticks, traders shouting about yams and pepper. Near the fig tree by the river path, the goat with the prince's human eyes rose slowly from sleep. His legs felt stiff. His belly felt hollow. He walked to a place where scraps were thrown. He nosed at a banana peel, chewed, and swallowed. A rooster pecked close. A dog sniffed his side. He kept his head low. Shame pressed on him like a heavy cloth. He did not see the three men watching from the shadow of a wall. They were nobles, but they wore plain wrappers so no one would notice them. Their names were Deo, Sephew, and Lami. They had once bowed to the prince. Now they smiled like men who had found a coin in the sand. Deo whispered, "The city laughs. The king is weak. The oracle's words have shaken the court." Sephew rubbed his hands. "And a kingdom that laughs is easy to lead by a rope." Lami nodded toward the goat. "There is our rope." They moved as one, slow and careful. Deo held a loop of thick rope. Sephew carried a short stick. Lami had a burlap sack. The goat lifted his head. His amber eyes widened. He smelled danger the way a goat smells rain. He stepped back. Deo made his voice soft. "Easy, little one. Easy." The goat turned to run. Sephew threw the stick. It clacked against the ground and startled him. Lami rushed from the side and dropped the sack over his head. Deo slipped the rope around his neck and pulled tight. The goat cried out, a broken, human-sounding bleat. People turned and stared. A few laughed. A few hissed. A child pointed. They caught the cursed goat. A beggar with one blind eye struck the ground with his stick. "Leave him," he shouted. "He has already fallen." But the nobles pulled the rope hard. "Out of the way," Deo snapped. They dragged the goat through the street. He kicked and coughed and stumbled. The sack rubbed his face. Dust filled his mouth. The rope burned his neck. He could not see, but he felt the stones under his hooves and the rough pull at his throat. His heart beat fast as drum hands. At the palace gate, guards stepped forward. "What is this?" Deo smiled and bowed lower than truth. "A gift for the court," he said. "A plaything to lighten heavy hearts." The guards looked at the sack, then at the rope, then at the three nobles' smooth faces. One guard frowned. "The king said the goat should not be harmed." "No harm," Sephew said sweetly. "Only laughter." The gates opened. The rope jerked. The goat stumbled inside. The inner courtyard shone with morning light. Courtiers gathered at once, like flies when a pod is opened. The nobles yanked off the sack. The goat squinted and blinked. Dust streaked his face. The rope dug into his skin. Deo raised his arms as if showing a prize fish. "Look what the city brought us." Laughter rose like hot oil in a pan. "The prince returns," a noble cried. "Bow, hornhead," another shouted. Lami tugged the rope until the goat's knees bent. He fell. The crowd clapped. Someone threw a peel. Someone else tossed a dry cassava skin. The goat flinched and lowered his head. On an upper balcony, Lady Nkiru leaned on the rail, her coral beads shining like drops of blood. Her mouth curved into a thin smile. Beside her, Prince Okoro watched with cool eyes, saying nothing. Down in the courtyard, Baba Kunal arrived at a slow run. He pushed through the crowd, breath hard, face hot with anger. "Enough. Enough," he cried. "He is still of royal blood." Deo shrugged. "Royal blood? I see only fur." Sephew bowed with mock grace. "We only give the people what they want, Baba. Laughter eases fear." Baba Kunal's old hands shook. "You ease your own hearts with cruelty." The crowd jeered louder. Two guards brought a small wooden cage, the kind used to hold goats for market. Lami kicked it. Fit for a prince. Before Baba could stop them, the three men forced the goat inside and latched the wooden bar. The cage was narrow. When he tried to turn, his side pressed hard against the slats. Nkiru clapped once, soft and pleased. "Take the cage to the main courtyard," she said. "Let the city enter and laugh. Let them feed him scraps. Let their fear become joy." Okoro lowered his eyes, hiding his thoughts. "As you wish," he said. The cage scraped as they dragged it over stone. The goat swayed and knocked his knees. Splinters bit his fur. He tried to keep his head high, but the wood pressed down. Baba Kunal walked beside the cage, whispering, "Forgive us, my prince. Forgive this house that cannot remember its own kindness." The cage reached the main courtyard. By then, a crowd had gathered, soldiers, market women, masked dancers with chalk still on their cheeks, even children with sticky fingers from roasted maize. Drums started a small, sharp rhythm that sounded more like mockery than music. "Dance, goat," someone shouted. "Dance like a prince." Lami tossed a piece of dried yam through the slats. It bounced off the goat's nose. People laughed. A soldier poked a stick between the bars to make him jump. The goat jerked and hit his head on the top rail. The crowd roared. "Bow to the people." Deo cried. The goat lowered his head. Not for them. Not for their laughter. But because something inside him was tired beyond pride. Tired beyond anger. He lowered his head because it was all he could do. At the edge of the courtyard, Amina stood with a heavy tray in her hands. She had come to carry food to the guardhouse. Now the tray shook. Anger and sorrow fought inside her like two goats on a narrow log. She watched the prince's human eyes flinch at every shout. She watched his sides heave. She watched a tear slip down his cheek and catch in his fur. "Stop," she whispered. No one heard her. A boy in the crowd threw a stone. It hit the cage and made a sharp crack. Amina stepped forward without thinking. "Stop it," she cried. "He is hungry. He is tired. What do you gain by hurting him?" The boy laughed and reached for another stone. Before he could throw, a guard slapped the back of his head. "Enough," the guard barked. "No stones." He looked at Amina and frowned. "Girl, mind your tongue." Amina lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir." But when the guard turned away, she slipped closer to the cage, moving between people like a fish through weeds. She knelt, pretending to fix a sandal strap, and pushed a small piece of roasted plantain through the slats. The goat sniffed, then ate. His breath warmed her fingers. His eyes met hers. In them she saw not a beast but a man falling through a long, dark well and trying to hold onto any hand offered. Amina whispered, "I see you." Then she stood and moved away before anyone could notice. The crowd swelled. All morning and into the afternoon, people came and laughed and pointed. Some tossed scraps. Some poked with sticks until the guards barked at them to stop. The goat stood and lay and stood again. His legs shook. His throat ached. The rope rubbed the skin raw under his fur. At midday, Nkiru descended to the courtyard with two maids holding cloths over her head to shade her from the sun. She paused before the cage and looked down her narrow nose. "Tell me, little goat," she said, voice sweet with poison, "where is your crown?" The goat met her eyes. He said nothing, for he could not. But Amina, watching from the shade of a pillar, saw a tiny fire light in those amber eyes. Not pride. Not the old, sharp kind. A new fire. A quiet one. Nkiru's smile thinned. She flicked a peel at his feet and turned away. Okoro approached next, slow and smooth like river water. He stood just out of reach and spoke softly, so only the goat and the nearest guard could hear. "Look where pride leads," he said. "Remember this, cousin, a throne sits higher than a man, but falls faster than he does." He turned and walked away, sandals whispering on stone. Baba Kunal came last. He knelt beside the cage, not caring that dust stained his wrap. He slid a calabash of clean water through the bottom slat and held it steady with both hands while the goat drank. "My prince," he whispered, Do not let their laughter poison your heart. Listen to the wind inside you. It says what the oracle said, humility saves. The goat's ears flicked. He drank until the calabash was empty. Then he rested his chin on the slat and closed his eyes. By evening, the crowd thinned. Clay lamps were lit. Shadows climbed the walls. The cage was dragged to the side of the courtyard near the kitchens. Amina returned with a broom and a bucket to sweep the stones. She moved slowly, waiting for the guards to grow bored. When their talk turned to wrestling matches and whose cousin had married whose sister, she slipped to the cage again. She knelt and began to brush dust from the goat's fur with the corner of her shawl. "Easy," she whispered. "I will help you sleep." He turned his head and breathed out, a long, tired sound. Amina cleaned the tear tracks from his face. She slid 2 small pieces of fried yam through the slats. He ate, slower now. "You are not alone," she said. "Not while I have hands." Footsteps sounded behind her. She jumped to her feet, heart flying into her throat. A guard walked past, yawning. He did not look her way. She let out a breath she had been holding too long. From inside the cage, the goat watched her with patient eyes. In the faint light, Amina thought, only for a heartbeat, that she saw a reflection there. Not of lamps. Not of guards. A reflection of who he had been. She wanted to say his name, but she did not. The courtyard had too many ears. "Sleep," she whispered. "Tomorrow we'll ask for strength." She stood to go, then paused. With the tip of her finger, she traced a small circle in the dust by the cage, just a simple mark, nothing grand, nothing dangerous. "A promise," she murmured. "I will return." She left her shawl folded near the cage as if she had simply forgotten it while working. The cloth would be a small pillow for a tired head. She walked away, carrying the broom and bucket, her back straight, her eyes on the ground like any servant at day's end. Night deepened. A thin wind sang along the clay walls. Far off, a single drum beat 3 slow notes and then stopped, as if a dream had cleared its throat and decided not to speak. In the darkness, 2 shadows crept along the palace edge, the same 2 traitor nobles who had thrown the rope and the sack. Deo and Sephu crouched near the cage, whispering. "Tomorrow we will make him bow before the whole city," Deo said. "We will hang a sign on his neck, Palace Pet." Sephu chuckled without joy. "And if the people tire of laughter? Then we will offer a new show," Deo said. "A darker one." They slipped away, the sound of their sandals small and mean. Inside the cage, the goat lay his head on Amina's forgotten shawl. It smelled of soap, smoke, and something gentle. He closed his eyes. The ground did not feel as hard. Above him, the moon drifted across the sky, white again but watching still. Somewhere in the palace, an old man prayed. Somewhere else, a girl folded her hands and asked the ancestors for courage. And deep in the court's longest shadow, a woman in black and red stood alone, touching a serpent amulet at her throat. Nkiru's eyes were dark and bright at once. She looked up at the sky and smiled a thin smile. "The moon has given me a door," she whispered. "Soon, I will step through it." Night stretched its black cloth across the kingdom of Zabari, and the palace lamps flickered like tired eyes. The goat, once Prince Adewale, slept fitfully in his wooden cage near the kitchens, his head resting on Amina's forgotten shawl. Every sound woke him, the squeak of rats, the cough of guards, the cry of owls. Shame and fear curled inside him like a thorn he could not spit out. But while he tossed in uneasy sleep, in another wing of the palace, Lady Nkiru sat cross-legged before a low stool. A clay bowl of palm oil burned with a dim flame. Around her, black cloth hung to cover the windows. On the stool lay a serpent amulet carved from stone, its eyes rubbed with red dye. She pressed her fingers against it and whispered, "Spirits of shadow, hear me. The prince has fallen. His horns shame the kingdom. But shame is not enough. Give me power. Give me his end beneath the blood moon, and I will feed you with his life." The flame in the bowl bent sideways, though there was no wind. The amulet grew warm in her hand. Somewhere outside, a dog howled once and fell silent. Nkiru smiled. Yes. Soon. Behind the curtain of black cloth, Prince Okoro waited. He stepped forward, his face calm, his voice smooth as river water. So you mean to use the moon? Nkiru did not turn. The goat is weak. But the people's laughter will not last. Their fear must turn into awe. Sacrifice will give us that. Okoro's eyes gleamed in the half-light. And when the beast is dead, then you, my prince, she said softly, will sit on the throne of Zabari. And I will sit beside you. Okoro's smile was thin, but his silence was agreement. In the kitchens, Amina could not sleep. She stirred the cooking fires, scrubbed the pots, and told herself to rest. But her mind returned again and again to the cage, to the tear she had wiped from the goat's cheek, to the eyes that carried sorrow no animal could hold. She wrapped her shawl tightly and slipped outside. The night air was cool, scented with dust and palm oil. She crept to the courtyard and crouched by the cage. The goat stirred and lifted his head. His eyes met hers. Amina whispered, "They laugh at you. They call you cursed. But I do not believe you are only a goat. There is something in your eyes, something that remembers who you were." The goat breathed out a long sigh. His eyes glistened. For a moment, Amina thought she saw her own face reflected in them, not as a servant but as if she were something more, someone the ancestors had chosen to stand beside him. She brushed his fur gently with her fingers. "Sleep. Tomorrow I will bring food." But tomorrow did not bring peace. By midday, the nobles gathered again. Deo, Sefu, and Lami paraded the cage to the palace's main courtyard. Drums beat a mocking rhythm. Children danced in circles, chanting, "Prince with horns, prince with hooves. See how pride now trips and moves." The goat's head hung low. He chewed nothing. His body trembled. Amina watched from the servants' walkway, her hands clenched. She wanted to shout. She wanted to fight. But she was only a servant, and servants were not heard in the court of kings. Then she heard it. A whisper. Two women stood near the shade of a tree, their voices low. "The Lady Nkiru has called for the blood moon." "Yes. She says the goat will be laid on the altar. His blood will wash her path to power." Amina's blood froze. She dropped the wooden bowl in her hands. It clattered to the ground, spilling palm kernels across the stone. She stared at the goat in the cage, at the sorrowful eyes that once belonged to a prince. Her chest tightened. They mean to kill him. They mean to end him under the moon. Her hands shook. She bent quickly to gather the kernels so no one would see her face. But inside, her heart whispered, "I cannot let this happen." The oracle's voice, words she had overheard days before, echoed like thunder inside her memory. "Your arrogance will turn your crown into horns. And salvation shall rise from the hands you despise." She swallowed hard. "Perhaps," she whispered to herself, "the spirits meant me." And as the drums mocked in the courtyard, as the nobles laughed, as the goat stood weak and bound in his cage, Amina's resolve began to burn like a small, steady flame. The kitchen fires burned low that night, glowing red in the clay hearths. Servants washed the last calabashes and muttered about their day. Some spoke of the goat prince with cruel laughter. Others shook their heads, muttering prayers to the ancestors. But Amina sat apart, her hands idle, her mind heavy. She stared into the dying embers until they blurred into red rivers. In her chest, fear and courage wrestled. They will kill him under the blood moon. The whisper would not leave her. She saw it every time she closed her eyes, the goat chained to a stone altar, Nkiru's sharp smile, Okoro's cold gaze, the crowd roaring as a blade fell. She pressed her hands together. "What can I do?" she whispered into the fire. "I am only a servant. My hands are soft with scrubbing pots. What strength do I have against nobles and soldiers?" The fire crackled, spitting sparks. The sound reminded her of the oracle's words. "Salvation shall rise from the hands you despise." Her chest tightened. Could it be me? she asked aloud. Ancestors, is it me? No voice answered. Only the hiss of firewood. She thought of the goat's eyes, those human, sorrowful eyes that had met hers in silence. She remembered the single tear that had slid down his cheek. She remembered how he had bowed his head, not from pride, but from exhaustion. She clenched her fists. I cannot watch him die. I cannot. Her eyes burned with tears. She wiped them away quickly, for another servant had passed behind her carrying cassava. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the palace, Baba Kunal knelt before his small shrine. A clay pot of water sat beside a carved wooden figure of a river spirit. He whispered, Ancestors, guide me. The prince is cursed, but he is still flesh of the king. The kingdom walks toward a pit dug by pride and greed. Show me a rope to pull us back. The water rippled, though no hand touched it. Baba Kunal's old bones shivered. He did not yet know it, but the rope he prayed for had already begun to weave, in the heart of a servant girl who dared to care. The next morning, the cage was dragged to the courtyard again. The goat stumbled, his sides bruised from the wood. His head hung low. He no longer fought. The crowd jeered less now, not because their cruelty had ended, but because the sight was growing old. Their laughter was turning into whispers. Why does he still live? One man asked. He is cursed. Shouldn't he be sacrificed? A woman muttered. The gods must be angry until his blood is spilled, another said. Amina heard every word. Each one was a spear in her side. She moved closer with a bucket, pretending to scrub the stones. As she knelt, she whispered near the cage, Hold on. Please. I will find a way. The goat lifted his head weakly. His amber eyes met hers. For a moment, she felt as if he understood. That evening, while others ate their meals, Amina slipped away. She crept through narrow alleys behind the palace, her shawl pulled tight. At the far end of the servants' quarters stood an old woman weaving baskets. The woman looked up. Child, why do you walk like the night is chasing you? Amina bowed low. Mama Saad, I need counsel. If someone you cared for was in danger, great danger, would you risk yourself to save them? The old woman's hands stilled. She studied Amina's face. Danger makes cowards of many. But it also makes heroes of the few. The question is not whether you can risk yourself, child. The question is, can you live with yourself if you do not? Her words struck deep. Amina's breath shook. Then I must act. Mama Saad touched her arm. Be careful. Even a goat may carry the destiny of a kingdom. That night, as the moon rose pale and round, Amina crept once more to the cage. She laid her palm gently on the slats. I will not let them sacrifice you, she whispered. Even if it costs me my life. The goat stirred. His eyes glistened in the moonlight. He pressed his head softly against the wood where her hand rested. For the first time since his fall, the prince's heart stirred with something stronger than shame. Hope. And as the moon climbed higher, its light spilling like silver across the palace walls, the drums began again, slow, heavy, and full of dread. The blood moon was coming. And with it, the choice that would change everything. The sun fell slow over Zabari, turning the red walls of the palace the color of ripe kola nut. A warm wind moved through the palm leaves and made a soft hush-hush sound, like the sky telling a secret. People spoke in low voices. Children were called indoors early. Old women tied cloths over jars of water and put charms above their doors. Everyone felt it, the blood moon was coming. In a quiet room, Lady Nkiru sat before a low wooden stool. On it lay her serpent amulet. She rubbed red dye into its carved eyes and whispered, Spirits, the door opens tonight. Let my steps be sure. A thin line of smoke rose from a clay bowl beside her. The smoke twined into a small shape, like a snake made from mist. Nkiru smiled. She wrapped herself in a black and red wrapper and stood tall. Tonight, the goat will lie on the altar, she said. And tomorrow, the people will bow to me. Behind a curtain, Prince Okoro watched with his quiet eyes. He said softly, be steady. The people must see a ritual, not a hunger for power. Nkiru tilted her chin. They will see only what I give them. She slid the amulet's leather cord over her neck. Call the nobles. Light the torches. Paint the runes. Tell the drummers to beat slow and heavy. Okoro nodded once and turned away. At the far side of the palace, near the kitchens, a wooden cage stood in the shadow of a clay wall. Inside, the goat with the prince's eyes lay with his legs tucked under him. His breath was slow. His fur was dusty. His rope collar had rubbed his skin raw. When he lifted his head, his amber eyes looked tired but not empty. Footsteps echoed. Amina came to the cage with a folded cloth and a small gourd. I brought water, she whispered. Her hands shook, but her voice was firm. Drink. She slid the gourd through the bottom slat and steadied it while he drank. Then she pushed in a small roll of soft bread wrapped in leaves. Eat a little. You will need strength. He took the bread gently, as if he understood her worry. When he finished, Amina reached through the slats with the folded cloth. I made this from an old wrapper, she said. I stuffed it with dried grass. It is not much, but it will soften the wood. She tucked the pillow under his chest. Adewale's eyes warmed. A tear gathered, but did not fall. He pressed his forehead to the slat where her fingers rested. For a moment, they simply breathed together, one human, one cursed, sharing the same small pocket of quiet. Amina looked up at the sky. The moon was not yet red, but it had begun to climb. She swallowed hard. Listen, she said. I heard things I wish I had not heard. They will take you to the ancestral altar courtyard tonight. They will paint chalk circles and hang talismans. They will tie you to the stone. They will raise a blade. Her voice trembled. She drew a breath. I will not let that happen. The goat lifted his head slightly. His ears flicked. His amber eyes seemed to ask, how? I have a plan, Amina whispered. She glanced around and leaned closer. There is a narrow way along the wall, past the dye pit and behind the drummer's stand. It leads to the courtyard's edge, near the hanging charms. Few know of it because the clay there is cracked and the lamps do not reach. I can get close without being seen. She pulled a small bundle from her sash and unwrapped it. Inside lay a short knife with a smooth wooden handle, a length of rough rope, and a small gourd of oil. I do not want to hurt anyone, she said quickly, shaking her head. But I can cut a rope. I can loosen a knot. I can oil a chain so it slips. If I can reach you, I will free your front legs. When I shout, roll toward me. Do not be afraid. We will run along the wall to the dye pit, then into the fabric sheds. The cloth will hide us. She met his eyes. Do you understand? The goat watched her, steady and calm now. He blinked once, slow, like a nod. Amina's lips pressed together. Good. She tied the knife, rope, and gourd back into the cloth and slid it under the edge of the cage, hidden beneath a loose stone. When the drums begin, I'll go first. Wait for my signal. Footsteps rang on stone. Amina straightened at once and picked up a broom. 2 guards came around the corner, talking about meat and millet. They glanced her way and moved on. Amina kept sweeping until they turned another corner. Then she bent and touched the slat once more. Hold on, she whispered. Hold on for me. Far across the palace, Baba Kunnal stood in the ancestral altar courtyard and watched the preparations with a bitter heart. Young men drew white chalk rings on the red clay. They painted Serpentine River signs across the floor. Tall torches were planted in iron cups. Talisman ropes were strung overhead, carrying shells and small gourds that knocked together with soft clacks. In the center sat the stone altar, its top worn smooth by the years. Carvings along the sides showed old stories, river spirits, kings bending to take oaths, and moon signs that looked like open eyes. Baba Kunnal turned his face toward the sky. Ancestors, he murmured, let wisdom walk faster than pride. Let mercy walk faster than fear. "Old man," a stern voice said behind him. Baba turned. Okoro and Nkiru approached with a group of nobles. Nkiru's wrapper swirled at her feet like a shadow come alive. The serpent amulet lay against her collarbones. Okoro's dark green tunic showed a line of bright stitches that caught the torchlight in small, sharp sparks. "You should rest," Okoro said. "The night will be long, and your bones are older than you think." Baba Kunal bowed, but not too low. "My bones know the weight of nights and days. They do not fear one more." Nkiru's lips curved. "Careful, steward. Some who watch too closely see things they should not." Baba met her eyes. "Some who reach too far touch things that will bite." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Okoro smiled as if the moment had not happened. "Bring the drummer," he told a guard. A slow beat, steady as a heart. Baba slipped back toward the courtyard edge. From the corner of his eye he marked the shadowed lane behind the drummer's stand. He remembered it from years ago, when he was young and nimble and the palace was a different shape in his mind. He had used that path to carry a sick child to the healer's hut without waking the king. The memory made his breath catch. He looked up to where the first pale edge of moonlight touched the top of the clay wall. "Ancestors," he whispered again, "tie our loose ends into a rope strong enough to pull a kingdom." The palace felt like a drum itself by late evening, tight-skinned, waiting for the first strike. People gathered in the outer courtyard. Some carried palm fronds. Some held charms. Many just stood, eyes wide, mouths thin, faces pulled between fear and hunger for a show. Children clung to their mothers' wrappers. Men spoke soft, hard words to hide their unease. Amina moved among them in the plain brown dress of a kitchen girl. She carried a small basket on her arm. Inside, under folded cloth, lay the knife, rope, and oil. Her heart beat so loud she feared it might be heard above the crowd. She reached the corner near the dye pit, where old clay tubs stood like sleeping hippos. The place smelled of indigo and wet earth. She slipped behind the tubs and pressed herself against the cracked wall. From here, a narrow lane ran like a throat toward the altar courtyard, half hidden by stacked baskets and bundles of old cloth. Lamps did not reach this lane. Only thin moonlight slid across it in pale strips. Amina waited. Her breath made small clouds in the cool night. She whispered to her own hands, "Be steady. Be steady. Be steady." A soft step sounded behind her. She spun, ready to run. A hand reached out, not to grab, but to touch her elbow gently. "Child," Baba Kunal said softly. "If you are going where I think you are going, you should not walk alone." Amina stared. Words failed her. Baba's old eyes held both worry and fierce light. "Do not answer with your mouth," he said. "Answer with your silence." He glanced at her basket. "If you must risk your life, at least let an old man carry some of the fear." She swallowed and gave the smallest nod. Baba Kunal pulled a small cowrie charm from his pocket and pressed it into her palm. "For cover," he whispered. "Not true magic. Only memory. It belonged to my wife. She believed it made shadows kinder. Sometimes belief is enough." Amina's throat tightened. "Thank you." "Listen," he said, "when the drums start, they will move the goat. You will have one moment, between the second and third drum strikes, when all heads turn to the blade for the blessing. That is when ropes are often loosened to shift the body on the altar. That is when you move. Do you understand?" She nodded again. "Between the second and the third." Baba Kunal took the basket from her. "I will draw a guard's eye and cough like an old pot. You go past me, along the wall. Make yourself small. Clay loves the small. When you reach the charms, cut the altar rope and oil the chain. If you cannot cut, then loosen. If you cannot loosen, then shout." He placed the basket back into her hands. "But do not leave without trying." Amina's eyes stung. "I will not leave." They stood together a quiet moment, two small shapes beside the dye tubs while the palace swelled with people and fear. At last the goat came. Deo, Sephu, and Lami dragged the cage into the altar courtyard with long, proud faces. 2 guards walked behind. The goat swayed with each pull. He did not make a sound. Torches flamed. Smoke rolled like thin blankets between the pillars. Shadows climbed the red walls and curled under the hanging charms. The crowd pressed forward, then parted, as if the altar itself drew a path. "Bring him," Okoro said, his voice smooth and even. The nobles opened the cage. The goat tried to stand, but his legs shook. Sephu gripped the rope collar and yanked. "Move," he said. "Do not waste our time." The goat stumbled out. He lifted his head once, and in the torchlight his amber eyes shone like chips of honey in a clay pot. A soft sound moved through the crowd, something between pity and fear. A baby whimpered and was hushed. They dragged the goat to the stone altar. The runes carved there seemed to glow in the red light, old stories waking under fire. The goat's side brushed the stone. He shivered. Nkiru stepped forward. Her black and red wrapper flowed like dark water. She touched the serpent amulet at her throat. "Lift your eyes, Zubari," she called. "The moon hears us. The ancestors watch. We offer a lesson to pride. We offer a path to peace." Baba Kunnal's jaw tightened. A lesson to pride, he thought. But whose pride? Okoro raised his hand. The drums began, slow, heavy, like a giant heart. Boom. The crowd murmured. Boom. Heads lifted to the blade a young acolyte held out for Nkiru's blessing. Amina moved. She slipped along the cracked wall, past baskets and cloth bundles, her feet finding quiet ground. She became a shadow inside shadows. Baba Kunnal coughed loudly and stumbled, knocking his shoulder against a spear haft. A guard laughed and bent to help him. For a breath, no eyes watched Amina. She reached the line of hanging charms, ropes with shells and tiny gourds, small carved faces, feathers tied with string. They brushed her hair and made soft clacking sounds. Beyond them, only an arm's length away, the goat lay pressed to the stone, rope pulled tight across his chest, chain fastened at his front legs. Amina slid the basket to the ground and pulled out the small knife. Her fingers shook. She closed her eyes, took one breath in, one breath out, and opened them again. Between the second and the third, Okoro's hand hung in the air. The drums sounded the second slow strike. Boom. Amina reached forward and slipped the knife under the altar rope. The fiber bit at the blade. She sawed, small and quick, careful not to lift her wrist too high. The rope began to thin. Across the altar, the acolyte lifted the blade. Nkiru turned her palm over it for the blessing. The torches hissed. The crowd leaned in. Baba Kunnal coughed again, louder, rougher, then clapped his hands together so the sound snapped like a twig. No one looked her way. Amina cut through the last rope fibers. The line fell slack across the goat's chest. She grabbed the gourd of oil, popped the cork with her teeth, and poured a thin line over the chain at his front legs. The oil crawled into the links and shone. The drums drew breath for the third strike. The goat's amber eyes flicked to hers. Amina met them and gave the smallest nod. "Be ready," she breathed. "On my word." The drum skin tightened. The palms over the drums lifted. The moon's first red light touched the top edge of the wall. And the third drum strike, deep and heavy, fell like a stone into a well. Boom. The third drumbeat rolled like thunder through the ancestral courtyard. Torches bent in the wind, their flames spitting red sparks into the night. Above, the moon glowed darker, heavy with crimson, as if it had dipped its face into blood. The goat, Prince Adewale cursed, lay on the cold stone altar, his sides rising fast, his eyes wide and glistening. Rope hung loose now across his chest, cut by Amina's hand, though no one had yet seen. Oil gleamed on the chain links at his legs. The crowd pressed closer, their faces glowing in torchlight. Children clung to their mothers. Elders muttered into their hands. Fear and hunger for spectacle warred in their eyes. Lady Nkiru stood tall in her black and red wrapper, her serpent amulet glowing faintly against her chest. She raised her arms. "Behold," she cried. Her voice cut like a spear. "The cursed one who mocked the spirits. Once proud, now humbled. Once heir, now beast. Tonight, we give his blood to cleanse Zubari." The crowd roared, half in fear, half in agreement. Beside her, Prince Okoro took the ceremonial blade from the acolyte. Its edge caught the torchlight, gleaming silver and red. He turned it slowly in his hands. The people hushed. The drums fell silent. Okoro's dark eyes flicked once toward the goat, then to Nkiru. He smiled faintly. "Let the blood moon drink," he said. He raised the blade. Amina's heart hammered. Her throat closed. She wanted to scream, but her voice stuck. Now, she told herself. It must be now. She leaned forward from behind the charms, hissed low, "Go," and shoved at the chain with all her strength. The oil had done its work. The link slipped. The chain clattered free. The goat bolted. He rolled sideways off the altar just as Okoro's blade came down. The steel struck stone with a ringing crack. Sparks leapt. The crowd screamed. "Seize him!" Nkiru shrieked. But the goat was already scrambling, legs flying. The altar rope slipped loose. He leapt into the shadows near the wall, his horns glinting red. Chaos erupted. Nobles stumbled back. Guards lunged. Children wailed. The drums beat again, but now the rhythm was wild, broken. Amina ducked low, slipping through the hanging charms. She grabbed the goat's rope collar and hissed, "This way." Together they darted toward the dye pits, their shapes half swallowed by shadow. Behind them, Nkiru's face twisted with fury. "Stop them," she screamed. She lifted her amulet high. The serpent eyes glowed red. Smoke poured upward as if the air itself was burning. Baba Kunal, standing near the torches, spread his arms and shouted, "Ancestors, protect the humble." His voice cracked like an old tree splitting in storm. The cowrie charm in Amina's sash glowed faintly as she ran. The goat stumbled, his hoofs slipping on clay. Amina pulled hard, breath ragged. "Come on," she cried. They reached the dye pit. Indigo water glistened black under the moonlight. Amina shoved a bundle of cloth aside, revealing a narrow hole in the cracked wall. "Here," she gasped. Quickly. The goat ducked, squeezing through. His horns scraped the stone. Amina followed, her dress tearing on the sharp edge. They fell into the darkness beyond, the sound of their breathing loud in the narrow lane. Behind them, shouts filled the courtyard. Guards clashed spears. Nkiru's furious voice carried like thunder, "Find them. The blood moon demands his death." But in the shadowed lane, hidden by dye tubs and old cloth bundles, the goat and the maiden crouched, hearts pounding, as the first true red light of the moon spilled fully across the palace. And in that light, the prophecy whispered again inside Amina's heart. "Salvation shall rise from the hands you despise." The lane behind the dye pits was narrow and dark, smelling of indigo and damp clay. Amina and the goat stumbled through, their breath loud in the close air. Behind them, the ancestral courtyard roared with chaos, shouts, clashing spears, the cries of children carried away, and above it all, Lady Nkiru's furious scream. "Find them. Find them before the moon drinks their blood." Torches swung, shadows stretched. Guards rushed through alleys like wolves hunting prey. Amina pulled hard on the rope collar, whispering, "Faster, faster." The goat stumbled, nearly falling. His hoof slipped on broken clay. His horns scraped the wall. He bleated low, a sound filled with both pain and fear. "Quiet," she begged. "They will hear us." From the other end of the lane, a torch flared. Voices shouted. "There. By the dye pits." Amina's heart leapt into her throat. She shoved at a bundle of folded cloth, tumbling it down into the path. Indigo dust exploded in a blue cloud. Guards coughed and cursed, waving torches wildly. She dragged the goat through the gap and darted left, her shawl snagging on a splintered post. It tore, but she did not stop. At the courtyard, Lady Nkiru raised her serpent amulet. The carved eyes glowed red, brighter than flame. Smoke poured upward as if the air itself had caught fire. She cried out words no one understood, her voice layered with whispers that sounded older than the earth. From the shadows, the shapes of snakes slithered across the courtyard floor, not real, not flesh, but made of smoke and fire. They writhed, snapping at the air. Children screamed. Nobles shrank back. Prince Okoro raised his blade high, his face still calm. "Hunt them," he ordered. "Bring the goat back to the altar. Kill the girl if you must." Amina ran. Her breath tore in her throat. Her bare feet slapped the clay. The goat stumbled beside her, dragging the rope, his sides heaving. Behind them came the pounding of boots, the clash of spears, the hiss of torches. At a corner, a guard lunged, spear flashing. Amina ducked. The spearhead sliced her arm, leaving a hot line of pain. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. She swung the basket in her hand, smashing it into the guard's face. He reeled back. "Go," she shouted to the goat. They plunged into another alley. Shadows twisted. From above, the moon poured red light across their backs like blood spilled from the sky. The goat faltered. His legs shook. He staggered into a wall and nearly fell. Amina grabbed his horns and pressed her forehead against his. "No," she whispered fiercely. "Do not give up. Not now. Not while I breathe." For a moment, something flickered in his amber eyes, something human, something fierce. He pushed himself upright. Together they stumbled forward again. Behind them, the guards shouted. "This way. This way." Nkiru's voice carried above them all, furious and sharp, "Bring me his head. The moon will not wait." At the edge of the palace wall, Baba Kunal waited. His old back ached. His knees trembled. But when he saw the shapes in the red light, a girl dragging a goat through the shadows, his heart leapt. "Here," he cried, waving them toward a gap in the wall where bricks had fallen. Quickly. Amina saw him and nearly sobbed with relief. She pulled the goat through the narrow break. His horns scraped, but then they were through. Behind them, torches flared. Guards closed in. Baba Kunal raised both arms. His voice rang like a drum. "Ancestors, blind their eyes." The torches guttered. Smoke blew into the guards' faces. They coughed and stumbled, their spears clattering. Amina, the goat, and Baba slipped into the open fields beyond the wall. The night spread wide before them. Tall grasses waved in the red light of the blood moon. Crickets sang. The city roared behind them. They ran into the fields, their shapes swallowed by shadow and grass. But the hunt was not over. Far behind, Nkiru's voice rose, echoing across the city like a curse. "You cannot run from the moon." And high above, the blood moon glowed darker, as if it had heard her. The fields stretched wide beneath the blood moon, tall grasses rustling like whispers in the wind. Amina ran with the rope in her hand, pulling the goat beside her. Baba Kunal followed, his old feet steady though his breath came sharp. Behind them, the palace roared with torches and drums. The goat stumbled often, his hooves slipping on the uneven earth. Amina tugged gently and whispered, "Stay with me. Please, stay with me." She was bleeding from her arm where the spear had cut her, but she did not slow. They reached the edge of the forest. Dark trees rose tall and close together, their leaves glowing faintly red in the moonlight. The forest hummed with insects and the far-off call of owls. Baba Kunal bent over, resting on his knees. "This way," he panted. "The trees will hide us. The grass is too open. Too many eyes." They pushed into the forest. Branches scratched at their arms. The goat staggered over roots, but Amina held his horns steady and guided him. At last, under the heavy shade of an irako tree, they stopped to rest. Amina dropped to her knees, chest heaving. She pressed her hand to the wound on her arm. It stung, but she tied it tight with a strip of cloth from her dress. She turned to the goat and brushed his dusty fur. "Are you hurt?" she whispered, though she knew he could not answer. His amber eyes met hers, glowing faint in the red moonlight. He bowed his head low, as if ashamed. "You are alive," Amina said softly. "That is enough for now." Baba Kunal lowered himself to a root and sighed. "Child," he said, "you were brave beyond words tonight. But the danger is not done. Nkiru will not rest. She has bound herself to the moon. She will hunt you until the curse is ended, or until one of you falls." Amina shivered. "What must we do?" Baba Kunal looked at the goat. His old eyes glistened. "The oracle's words still hold. Salvation shall rise from the hands you despise. That means someone the prince once mocked, someone the palace ignored, holds the key." Amina's heart raced. She looked down at her own scarred hands. "Do you mean me?" The old man nodded slowly. "I believe so. Your kindness has already broken the first rope of his curse. But more is needed. Blood was called for by the moon. If Nkiru cannot take his, she may seek yours." Amina swallowed hard, fear prickling her skin. But then she lifted her chin. "Then let her try. I will not let him die." The goat's ears flicked. His eyes softened, as if he understood every word. Far away, in the palace courtyard, Lady Nkiru stood before the altar. The serpent amulet at her throat burned hot, its eyes blazing red. She screamed into the night. "Spirits of shadow. They flee into the wild, but the moon still bleeds. Show me their path." Smoke rose from the altar and coiled into the air. It took the shape of snakes, hissing and twisting. They slithered across the ground, then darted toward the forest like arrows. The nobles shrank back in fear. One muttered, "She calls darkness too strong." Prince Okoro only folded his arms, his calm mask hiding the flicker of unease in his eyes. Nkiru's voice rang, "Run, little goat. Run, little girl. The moon will find you." In the forest, Amina felt the air grow colder. The cicadas went silent. The goat shivered and pressed close to her side. Baba Kunal looked up at the sky, his brow furrowed. "The hunt has begun," he whispered. Shapes slithered between the trees. Red smoke curled around the roots. A hissing sound filled the air, though no real snakes were there. Amina gripped the rope with one hand and the short knife with the other. Her heart hammered, but her voice was steady. "Stay behind me," she told the goat. The shadows moved closer. The hissing grew louder. Baba Kunal stood and lifted his old staff. His voice rose like a cracked drum. "Ancestors. If this child is chosen, shield her hands. If this beast still carries a prince's heart, protect his soul." The forest shook with wind though no storm blew. The smoke-hissing shadows paused, as if struck by an unseen wall. Amina's knife trembled in her grip. She stepped forward and shouted into the dark, "I am not afraid of you." Her voice rang through the forest. The goat pressed against her side, his amber eyes burning with something new, something not just human, not just beast. Hope. The shadows hissed and recoiled. But they did not vanish. They circled, waiting for weakness. And above them all, the blood moon glared down, red and heavy, as if watching to see whose courage would last longest. The forest of Zabari was thick with silence. The trees stood like black giants, their branches swaying under the red glow of the blood moon. Every shadow stretched long, curling, twisting, alive. Amina stood with her knife in hand, her heart hammering so loud she thought the whole world could hear it. The goat pressed close against her leg, trembling but refusing to turn away. Baba Kunal lifted his staff, the cowrie charm swinging from its end. The air hissed. From between the trees, smoke gathered, shaping into serpents. Their bodies writhed without weight, their eyes glowing red like coals. They hissed louder, circling the trio. The ground grew damp with mist, though no rain fell. One snake lunged. Amina raised her knife and swung wildly. The blade passed through smoke, but the serpent hissed back, recoiling. Her hands shook, but she held the knife steady. Baba Kunnal's voice rose in prayer. Ancestors, make her hands strong. Ancestors, let her heart burn brighter than the moon. Another serpent struck low, aiming for Amina's feet. The goat lunged forward with a furious bleat, his horns catching the smoky coil. For a heartbeat, the smoke broke apart like mist scattered by wind. Amina gasped. You fought for me. The goat shook his head, stamping his hooves. His amber eyes blazed. For the first time since his curse began, he looked less like a creature of shame and more like a guardian. The snakes closed in again, faster now, their hissing filling the air like rattles. Amina's fear rose, but so did her courage. She lifted her chin, raised her voice, and shouted into the dark, I am Amina, daughter of no noble, servant of no crown. But my hands carry kindness, and the spirits see me. If you want his life, you must take mine first. The forest shook. The snakes froze mid-coil. Their eyes flared, then dimmed. A silence as heavy as stone fell. The goat stepped forward, planting his hooves between Amina and the serpents. He lowered his head, horns gleaming red. His body trembled, but he did not move aside. For a long moment, the snakes hung still. Then, with a sound like wind through dry grass, they dissolved, the smoke curling back into the ground. The forest sighed. The hissing stopped. Amina's knees gave way. She dropped to the ground, her knife falling beside her. Her breath came hard and fast. They're gone. Baba Kunnal sagged against a tree, his staff heavy in his hand. For now, he wheezed. But their mistress will not stop. She has tied herself to the moon. Until the curse is broken, she will chase you. The goat stepped closer to Amina. He lowered his head until his forehead touched her shoulder, as if thanking her. She pressed her hand against his fur, tears slipping down her cheeks. You protected me, she whispered. Even like this, you are still a prince. The goat blinked slowly, his amber eyes soft, almost human. Baba Kunnal straightened, his voice heavy. The oracle spoke true, salvation shall rise from the hands you despise. Tonight, Amina's courage drove back the shadows. But more trials will come. He looked to the red moon above. And when the last trial comes, blood will be asked again. Either hers, or his. Amina clenched her jaw. She wiped her tears and lifted her chin. If blood is asked, let it be mine. I will not let him die. The goat made a sound, half bleat, half cry, that echoed through the forest like grief and defiance bound together. Above, the blood moon glared brighter, its red light spilling over the forest, watching, waiting. And far away, in the palace courtyard, Lady Nkiru hissed in fury. She had seen the smoke serpents dissolve. She had felt the bond between girl and goat push back her power. Her hand shook on the amulet. They defy me, she spat. Then let the moon itself be my weapon. Her eyes glowed red. She raised her arms to the sky. Spirits of shadow, give me the girl. Give me her blood. For if her hands hold salvation, then I will cut them from her body. The torches bent low. The drums began again, louder, faster, a heartbeat rushing toward doom. The palace of Zabari did not sleep. Not under the blood moon. Its walls glowed faint red, as if the clay itself had been set aflame. Fear whispered through the halls like smoke. And in the ancestral courtyard, Lady Nkiru knelt before the altar, her serpent amulet burning hot against her skin. Her breath came fast, her face lit by the glow of torches. The crowd that remained kept their distance, whispering, afraid, but none dared to step away. Nkiru's voice rose, sharp and jagged. Spirits of shadow. I gave you rope, I gave you fire, I gave you fear. But the girl defied me. The girl. Her nails dug into her palms until they bled. She raised her hands high, smearing her own blood across the serpent's eyes. Take me deeper, she demanded. Give me her life. If the goat escapes, the kingdom may yet remember him. But if the servant dies, all will tremble. Her blood will feed the moon. Her courage will rot. The flames bent low. The ground shivered underfoot. A cold wind swept through the courtyard though no storm brewed. The nobles shrank back. Even Prince Okoro, calm as always, felt the hair rise on his arms. One elder noble dared to speak. "Lady, you risk too much. To bind yourself to shadows is to..." Silence. Nkiru's voice cracked like lightning. The amulet glowed bright, its eyes alive with fire. She rose, towering, her wrapper whipping about her legs. "The girl's life is mine. By the next rising of the blood moon, I will cut her throat and drink her strength. Then all who mocked me will kneel." The ground groaned. The serpent carvings on the altar seemed to shift, their mouths opening as if they tasted blood. Okoro stepped forward, his face smooth. "Nkiru," he said softly, "be wise. Too much power drawn too quickly will scorch even the hand that holds it." She turned her red-lit gaze on him. "Do not speak to me of caution, cousin. When I stand as queen, it will be because I dared what you feared. And you will thank me." Okoro's smile was faint and unreadable. "Perhaps," he murmured. But in his heart, unease coiled like a snake. Far beyond the palace, in the shadowed forest, Amina sat against a tree trunk, her knife across her lap. The goat lay beside her, his breathing slow, his head heavy against her knee. Baba Kunal kept watch, his staff across his legs. The night was heavy. The moon glared red through the branches. Amina's wound throbbed where the spear had cut her. She pressed her palm to it and winced. The goat shifted, lifting his head to look at her. His amber eyes glowed faintly, filled with sorrow. "I'm fine," she whispered, stroking his fur. "Don't look at me like that. I chose this path." Baba Kunal stirred. His voice was quiet but strong. "Child, you have walked far already. But the path will grow darker. Nkiru will not chase him alone now. She will chase you. The blood moon is tied to sacrifice, and if she cannot take his blood, she will take yours." Amina's jaw tightened. "Let her come," she said. Her eyes shone in the red light. "If my blood ends this curse, I will give it. I would rather die saving him than live to see him fall." The goat pressed his head firmly against her shoulder, as if trying to say no. Baba Kunal sighed. "The oracle's words are true, salvation rises from the hands despised. But salvation need not always be death. Sometimes, salvation is the courage to live." Amina closed her eyes. "Then I will live. But not without him." The forest hummed with silence. The blood moon hung heavy. And in the distance, a drum began to beat again, slow, deep, like a heart counting down. Back in the palace, Nkiru stood before the crowd, her eyes glowing red. She raised her arms high. "By the next moonrise," she declared, "the goat will bleed, or the girl will bleed. Either way, Zubari will bow to me." The torches flared. The serpent amulet burned bright. The crowd gasped, half in awe, half in terror. And Prince Okoro, standing in the shadows, whispered only to himself, "If she rules through blood, the kingdom will rot. Perhaps I must choose my side before it is too late." The blood moon glared down, listening, waiting. The forest of Zubari was still beneath the blood moon, but its silence felt heavy, like the pause before thunder. Amina sat close to the goat, her knife clutched tight. Her cut arm throbbed, but she did not flinch. Beside her, Baba Kunal leaned against his staff, eyes closed but mind sharp, listening to the whispers of the night. Then it came, drums in the distance, faint but steady. A horn's cry cut across the trees. And with it, the sound of men moving, boots crushing leaves, spears clinking in rhythm. Baba Kunal's eyes snapped open. "They come." Amina's breath caught. "So soon?" The old man nodded grimly. "Nkiru wastes no time. She knows the moon waits for no one." The goat stamped nervously, his amber eyes darting through the shadows. His body trembled, but he did not run. From the trees ahead, torches flickered. Shadows stretched long and red. Voices rose. There. Search that grove. Don't let the girl escape. Amina pulled the goat back into the cover of bushes, heart hammering. She pressed her palm over his muzzle to silence his bleat. Her own breath came shallow. The guards passed close, their torches painting the tree trunks in firelight. Sweat rolled down her back. One wrong move, one rustle, and they would be seen. Then, snap. A twig cracked underfoot. A guard whipped around, torch raised. His eyes narrowed on the bushes. Here, he shouted, rushing forward. Amina gasped. She pushed the goat back, knife flashing up. But before the guard could strike, Baba Kunal thrust his staff into the earth. His voice thundered. Ancestors, shield the chosen. The ground shook. Roots burst from the soil, tangling around the guard's feet. He fell hard, his torch spinning away. Flames sputtered in the grass. The other guards roared. Witchcraft. Get them. Torches swung. Spears thrust. Amina pulled the goat and ran. Branches tore at her arms, roots tripped her feet, but she did not stop. Behind her, guards shouted and stumbled in the twisting roots Baba Kunal had summoned. But then, from the trees ahead, new figures emerged, cloaked, their eyes glowing faint red. Not soldiers. Not men. Nkiru's shadows. They moved fast, too fast, slipping between the trees, their shapes half smoke, half flesh. Their voices hissed like snakes. Amina froze, knife trembling. What are they? Baba Kunal's face was pale. Spirits bound to Nkiru's oath. She has loosed them. Child, run. One shadow lunged. The goat leapt between it and Amina, horns catching the smoky form. The shadow screamed, its voice like wind tearing through a hollow tree. It scattered, then reformed. Amina swung her knife. Smoke burst but regathered, swirling angrily. They were surrounded. Amina pressed her back to the goat's side, her knife raised. She whispered, "We fight together." The shadows hissed and closed in, circling. The blood moon glared down, eager for blood. And far away, in the palace, Lady Nkiru smiled before her altar. "Yes," she whispered. "Closer, closer, the girl will bleed before dawn." The forest roared with hissing. The shadows of Nkiru circled like wolves, their bodies flickering between smoke and flesh. Their glowing red eyes fixed on Amina, their whispers sharp as blades. Amina stood tall despite her trembling knees, knife clutched in her bleeding hand. Beside her, the goat pawed at the ground, horns lowered. Baba Kunal leaned on his staff, sweat streaming down his face as he muttered prayers. The first shadow lunged. Amina swung wildly. Her blade cut through smoke, scattering the creature for an instant. But it reformed with a shriek, rushing again. The goat charged, horns ramming into its chest. The shadow wailed, its body bursting into mist before coiling back together. "They cannot be killed," Baba Kunal cried. "Only delayed." Another came from the left. Amina turned too slow. The shadow's claw raked her side. She screamed, stumbling back. The goat leapt forward, pressing himself between her and the spirit, his horns slicing air. "Adewale," she cried, gripping her side. The goat bleated fiercely, stamping his hooves as if swearing he would not move. The shadows pressed closer, their voices hissing. "Give us the girl. Her blood for the moon. Her hands for the altar." Amina's breath came ragged. "No," she shouted. "You will not have me." She raised her knife again, though her arm shook. Baba Kunal slammed his staff into the ground. Light flared from the Kauri charm. The shadows hissed, staggering back. "Ancestors, bind them," he cried. But the old man groaned, his strength was fading. The charm's glow flickered. 3 shadows struck at once. The goat lunged into the first, his horns glowing faintly in the moonlight. Smoke burst, filling the air. Amina slashed at the second, barely driving it back. The third streaked toward her chest. Baba Kunal stepped in its path. The shadow slammed into him, knocking him to the ground. His staff clattered away. Baba! Amina screamed. The old man groaned but raised his hand weakly. Go. Take him. Do not look back. The goat bleated in rage, as if refusing to leave him. His amber eyes burned bright, fixed on the fallen elder. The shadows circled tighter. Their hiss became a chant, the girl. The girl. The girl. Amina gritted her teeth. She knelt beside Baba Kunal, pulling him close. I will not leave you. I will not. The goat pressed against them both, horns lowered, his body shaking but ready. And then, for the first time, something changed. A glow flickered faintly around the goat's horns. Not smoke, not shadow, but light, golden, warm, like fireflies at dusk. The shadows recoiled, hissing in fear. Baba Kunal's eyes widened. The curse is cracking, the spirits recognize his heart. Amina's chest tightened. She pressed her hand to the goat's fur. Yes. Fight them, Adewale. Show them who you are. The glow grew brighter. The shadows shrieked, covering their faces with smoky claws. For a moment, the forest blazed with golden light. But then, the glow faltered. The goat staggered, his legs trembling. The light dimmed to sparks. The shadows hissed, sensing weakness, and rushed again. Baba Kunal groaned, blood on his lips. I cannot hold them again. You must run, child. Amina shook her head, tears on her cheeks. No. We run together. Or not at all. The goat forced himself upright, his horns sparking faint light again. He stood between Amina and the shadows, his body trembling but unyielding. The shadows lunged, screaming. And then, the forest itself roared. A sudden wind howled through the trees. Branches whipped. Leaves swirled. The shadows were torn back, their forms scattering like dust in a storm. The moon's red light dimmed for a heartbeat. The hissing faded. Silence fell. Amina clutched the goat's fur, shaking. What just happened? Baba Kunal coughed, his voice faint. The ancestors, they have seen your bond. For a moment, they lifted their hand. Amina pressed her forehead to the goat's side, tears hot on her skin. Then we will not stop. No matter what comes. We will not stop. The goat's breath came heavy, but he lowered his head against her shoulder, his eyes soft with gratitude. Far away, in the palace, Lady Nkiru staggered as if struck. Blood ran from her nose. She gripped the serpent amulet, hissing. The girl, she strengthens him. This cannot be. Her eyes blazed with fury. Then I will not wait for the moon. I will drag her myself. The blood moon glared down, red as fire, as if eager to see whose will would break first. The forest lay hushed after the storm of shadows, but its silence was uneasy, like a wound sealed too quickly. The blood moon still hung above, red and swollen, its glow staining every branch, every leaf, every breath of air. Amina sat on the ground, her hand stroking the goat's fur. Her knife lay beside her, her body trembling from exhaustion. Baba Kunal leaned weakly against a tree, his chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. Rest, he whispered, his voice frail. You have fought well, but the true battle waits ahead. Amina pressed her forehead to the goat's horns. How much more can we endure, she murmured. The goat's amber eyes blinked at her, tired yet unyielding, as if to say, as long as it takes. But far away, in the palace courtyard, Lady Nkiru prepared herself. She stood alone before the altar, the serpent amulet glowing hot against her chest. Torches burned low, bending toward her as if afraid. Her wrapper of black and red clung to her body, her eyes reflecting the blood moon above. You dare defy me, child of clay, she hissed, speaking to the night, to the girl who had slipped her grasp. You think the spirits chose you? Then let us see if you can stand when I come myself. She lifted the amulet high, chanting in a language older than the palace walls. Smoke rose around her, black and red. Her body shivered, then stilled. Her voice deepened, layered with echoes. By oath of blood, by moon of fire, I bind my flesh to shadow. Carry me, spirits, to where she hides. Her blood is mine. The altar cracked. The serpent carvings glowed red. A wind screamed across the courtyard. Nkiru's body stretched and twisted, her eyes glowing like coals. Her form grew taller, sharper, cloaked in smoke. She stepped once into the firelight and vanished. In the forest, the wind shifted. The trees groaned as if bowing to a new weight. The night grew colder, though the moon still burned hot. Amina shivered, clutching the goat close. Baba Kunnal's eyes widened. She comes, he whispered. Not her servants. Not her hunters. She herself. The ground trembled. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, bending toward a single point. From between the trees, a shape emerged, tall, cloaked, eyes burning red. Lady Nkiru. Her voice was not loud, yet it carried through every leaf, every branch, every breath of the forest. You ran far, little maid. You hid well. But the moon does not forget. And neither do I. Amina staggered to her feet, knife in hand. Her body shook, but her voice was steady. You will not touch him. Nkiru's laugh was sharp and cold. Him? He is no prince. He is meat. He is curse. And you, her red gaze swept over Amina, you are the true key. The spirits whisper of your hands. If I take them, the curse is broken in my favor. The throne will be mine. The goat stepped in front of Amina, horns lowered, hooves scraping the soil. His body shook, but he did not move aside. Nkiru sneered. Pathetic. Even as a beast, he dares to defy me. She raised her arm. Smoke swirled, shaping into blades that glimmered red in the moonlight. Then let us end this. She hurled the first blade. It streaked toward them like lightning. Amina shoved the goat aside, swinging her knife up. Steel met smoke with a hiss. The blade shattered into sparks. Her arms burned, but she did not fall. Baba Kunnal raised his staff, his voice breaking yet strong. Ancestors, shield their path. Light flared once, but dimly. His body sagged, his strength nearly spent. Nkiru laughed, stepping closer. Old man, your prayers are dry as dust. You cannot save them. Only power can. She raised both hands, smoke writhing around her like snakes. And I am power. The goat bleated, fierce and wild, his horns sparking faint golden light. He scraped the ground, ready to charge. Amina lifted her knife, blood dripping from her arm, her eyes blazing with defiance. For the first time, the three stood together, the old sage, the servant girl, the cursed prince. And before them, the dark noblewoman who would tear the kingdom apart. The forest held its breath. The moon watched, red and merciless. The true battle had begun. The forest of Zabari seemed to fold inward, every branch bowing under the weight of the blood moon. Lady Nkiru stepped closer, smoke swirling around her feet like snakes. Her eyes blazed red. Her amulet pulsed with power, each beat in rhythm with the moon above. Amina stood with her knife ready, her body trembling but her spirit fierce. Baba Kunnal leaned on his staff, sweat shining on his wrinkled brow, whispering prayers that cracked with strain. The goat, Prince Adewale cursed, scraped the ground with his hooves, horns tipped with faint golden light. Nkiru's laugh split the air. You think 3 broken reeds can stand against a storm? The moon feeds me. You are nothing but shadows before fire. She lifted her hands. Smoke leapt from her fingers, curling into spears. They whistled through the air. Amina swung her knife. One spear shattered into sparks, searing her palm. She gasped but did not drop the blade. Another spear struck the ground, exploding into smoke that burned her throat. She coughed, eyes watering, but forced herself to stand tall. The goat charged. His horns caught the third spear midair. It burst apart, showering sparks. The golden glow on his horns grew brighter. Nkiru hissed. So the beast has teeth. She drew the smoke back into her hand, shaping it into a long crimson blade. Let us see if his teeth can bite steel. She lunged. Amina barely had time to move. Nkiru's blade slashed downward. She raised her knife. Steel met smoke, and the clash rang like iron on stone. The force flung her back against a tree. Her knife clattered to the ground. Amina! Baba Kunal cried. The goat leapt at Nkiru, horns flashing gold. He rammed her side. She staggered, her smoke blade faltering. She hissed, fury twisting her face. You dare touch me, she spat. She raised her hand and struck. Smoke whips lashed across the goat's body, tearing his hide. He stumbled, blood streaking his fur, but stood again, his amber eyes blazing with rage. Enough! Baba Kunal roared. He slammed his staff into the earth. The Kauri charm flared, brighter than before, flooding the grove with light. Ancestors, bear witness. This child fights for truth, this beast carries a prince's soul. Do not let the darkness consume them. The light struck Nkiru, forcing her back a step. She shrieked, shielding her face. The forest trembled. But Baba Kunal gasped, his knees buckling. The light flickered. His old body sagged, his strength nearly gone. Nkiru laughed through her fury. Old man, you burn yourself like dry wood. When the flame dies, only ash will remain. She thrust her blade at him. Amina screamed. She crawled across the ground, grabbing her knife, and flung herself between them. The blade struck her shoulder, slicing deep. Pain seared her, but she stood firm, blocking Nkiru's strike with her small steel. Blood poured down her arm. She gritted her teeth and cried out, "You will not touch him." The goat bleated, a cry so fierce it shook the air. His horns flared with golden fire. Light burst outward, brighter than any torch. Nkiru staggered back, her smoke curling away. "No," she whispered, eyes wide. "It cannot be." The goat stepped forward, glowing brighter with each breath. His horns burned like suns. His eyes no longer just human, but filled with ancestral power. Amina, bloodied and trembling, reached for him. Her palm pressed against his fur. "Yes," she whispered. "Show her who you are." The ground shook. The forest roared. Golden light erupted from the goat's body, tearing through the shadows. Nkiru screamed as the glow struck her, her smoke unraveling in streams. She fell back, clutching her amulet, eyes blazing with hate. "This is not the end," she spat, her voice broken. "The moon still bleeds. And it will have its sacrifice." She vanished into smoke, retreating into the forest, her screams echoing long after her body was gone. Silence fell. Amina collapsed to her knees, blood soaking her dress. The goat pressed against her side, his light dimming but still glowing faintly. Baba Kunal stumbled forward, laying his trembling hands over her wound. "Child," he whispered, his voice raw, "you have given more than strength. You have given heart. The ancestors saw it. And they will not forget." Amina leaned against the goat, her breath ragged. We're still alive." The goat lowered his head against her, his horns warm with fading light. His amber eyes were soft, filled with gratitude. But above, the blood moon still glared, darker, heavier, watching. The battle was not yet over. The forest lay broken in silence. Smoke curled from the trees where Nkiru's shadow had vanished. The air smelled of iron and fire. Amina leaned weakly against the goat, her arm burning from the wound Nkiru's blade had carved. Blood soaked the cloth she had tied to her shoulder, but her eyes were fierce even through pain. Baba Kunal knelt beside her, his old hands trembling as he pressed herbs into the wound. His breath came ragged, but his prayers never ceased. The goat, Prince Adewale cursed, stood guard, his horns still glowing faint gold, though the light dimmed with every breath. His amber eyes scanned the forest, watchful, ready. Then, from the shadows between the trees, a light flickered. Not red like the blood moon, nor gold like the goat's horns, but white, pure, soft, ancient. The air thickened. The crickets hushed. Leaves trembled without wind. And from the glow stepped the oracle. Her figure was cloaked in cloth the color of storm clouds, her staff gleaming with cowrie shells and feathers. Her hair flowed like river water, streaked with silver. Her eyes glowed faint white, as if the moon itself had borrowed her gaze. Amina gasped. She tried to rise, but pain forced her back down. You came. The oracle's voice rolled low, every syllable vibrating through the forest. Child, I have walked beside you from the start. Did you not hear my words echo in your heart when fear gripped you? Amina's breath shook. Salvation shall rise from the hands you despise. That was you. The oracle nodded slowly. Yes. And tonight, the spirits confirm it. Your hands carry the key. Baba Kunal bowed his head low, his voice hoarse. Great mother of prophecy, speak plain. What must be done to break this curse fully? The oracle's eyes shifted to the goat. His glowing horns flickered, his body trembling, his eyes meeting hers with sorrow and hope. The curse is old, she said. It was woven not only from his arrogance, but from the pride of kings before him. The horns upon his brow are the crown twisted by sin. To tear them away requires more than power. It requires sacrifice. Amina's blood ran cold. Whose sacrifice? The oracle stepped closer. Her eyes pierced Amina's soul. Blood for blood. A willing heart for a cursed one. Either the prince must die, or you must give what the moon demands. Amina's chest tightened. My life. The oracle's voice was heavy, yet kind. Yes. But the choice is yours, child. The spirits do not force the willing. If you choose silence, the prince remains a beast, and the kingdom rots under shadow. If you choose sacrifice, your blood seals the curse, and he is restored. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The goat bleated, loud and raw, his horns flashing bright. He shook his head furiously, pressing against Amina as if to shield her. His amber eyes brimmed with anguish. The oracle's gaze softened. He knows. And he refuses to let you pay his price. Amina's eyes filled with tears. She laid her hand on his fur. But without me, he will never be free. The oracle looked at the wound on Amina's shoulder, still bleeding faintly. She touched her staff to it. The blood glowed red, brighter than flame. The moon has already tasted you, she said. And because you bled willingly for him, the spirits lean toward mercy. But mercy is not enough. The final trial has yet to come. When the blood moon burns brightest, you must decide whose blood it will drink. Silence fell heavy again. Baba Kunal bowed lower, his voice trembling. Is there no other way? The oracle shook her head. No. Only humility and sacrifice can cleanse arrogance and greed. The kingdom's fate rests on her choice. She turned to Amina, her voice deep, her staff glowing white. Prepare yourself, child. The hour is close. Nkiru will come again, stronger, mad with hunger. And when she raises the blade, your choice must be made. Blood of the prince, or blood of the maiden. Her form began to fade into smoke and light. But her last words echoed through the trees. The crown cannot be reborn until the horns are broken. And horns break only with blood. The forest fell silent again. Amina clutched the goat's fur, tears slipping down her cheeks. Baba Kunal bowed his weary head. And above them, the blood moon burned brighter still, demanding its due. The blood moon reached its peak, swollen and crimson, drowning the forest in red light. Every tree seemed aflame. Every shadow stretched long and sharp. The air pressed heavy on the skin, thick with the taste of iron. Amina stood tall though her body trembled, her dress torn, blood staining her shoulder. Baba Kunal leaned weakly on his staff, his breath shallow, his eyes watchful. The goat, Prince Adewale cursed, stood at her side, horns glowing faint gold, amber eyes blazing with defiance. From the shadows, Nkiru returned. Taller than before, cloaked in smoke, her serpent amulet burning so bright it seared the air. Her laughter echoed like thunder. You think to resist me still? The moon demands blood. If I cannot take his, she pointed her smoke blade at the goat, then I will take yours, girl. Amina raised her knife, her voice steady though her knees shook. You will not have either. Nkiru sneered. You cannot stop me. She lunged, her blade streaking red fire. The goat leapt before Amina, his horns clashing with Nkiru's blade. Light burst, gold against red. The clash shook the forest, sparks raining like fireflies. Nkiru stumbled back, fury twisting her face. Enough, she screamed. She raised both arms, smoke surging, forming a storm of blades above her. If one life will not bow, I will cut down all three. Baba Kunal slammed his staff into the ground. His voice rang like a drum. Ancestors! The hour is now. Let truth rise, let pride fall. His charm flared, but faintly. His strength was nearly gone. The storm of blades shrieked downward. Amina threw herself across the goat, spreading her arms. Then take me, she cried. Take my life, but spare his. He is still our prince. And he will be better than before. Her blood dripped onto his horns. The glow burst, bright gold, burning the smoke like dry grass. The storm dissolved in a blinding flash. Nkiru screamed. No. She clutched her amulet, but it cracked, split, and shattered. The smoke swallowed her, shrieking, until her form dissolved into nothing. The goat collapsed, golden fire racing along his horns. His body shuddered, stretched, giving way to flesh, hoofs to hands, horns to crown. Prince Adewale rose. His body blazed with ancestral light, his face marked by humility. He stepped forward, catching Amina as she sagged in pain. The crowd, drawn by the glow, filled the forest's edge. Courtiers, servants, soldiers, all stared in awe. Adewale turned, his voice carrying like thunder. Strike her, and you strike me. Her blood broke the curse. Her courage saved us all. From this day, I will rule not in pride, but in humility, guided by her. The people gasped. Murmurs rose, a servant. Impossible. Then the oracle appeared, her staff glowing white. Her voice rolled across the forest. The spirits have chosen. She is marked. Before their eyes, Amina's wound sealed, leaving a glowing scar across her shoulder. The mark pulsed like fire, a living sign of blessing. Silence. Then, one by one, the people bowed. Or replaced doubt. Fear gave way to wonder. The prince knelt before Amina, lowering his head. It was your kindness, not my crown, that saved me. Will you rule with me? Tears shone in her eyes. She nodded, and the forest erupted in cheers. The crown once twisted into horns was reborn, not through power, but through humility. Moral lesson. Pride can destroy kings, but kindness can crown the lowliest of servants. The greatest power is not found in crowns or swords, but in humility, love, and sacrifice. If you were in Amina's place, would you risk your life for someone who once mocked you? Comment your answer below, I want to hear your thoughts. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable African folktales where love, pride, and destiny collide. Your support helps these stories live on.